The morning began like any other. Coffee in hand, birds chirping softly in the distance until I stepped outside and instantly sensed something was off. A stench so harsh it twisted my stomach, hit me before I even reached the water. Turning the corner of my house, I stopped cold. My pond, the one I had spent years nurturing, was destroyed. The surface was scattered with lifeless silver bodies. My Nevada pupfish floated in the gray, chemical-tainted water. I barely had time to understand the loss before my neighbor Tom appeared at the fence, looking shaken. He said he'd witnessed something around 6 o'clock a.m. A figure, Karen Hartley, our HOA president, spraying something over my fence with a garden pump sprayer, muttering about teaching me a lesson, and finally dealing with the eyesore. I had moved to Maple Grove Estates 3 years earlier, specifically for that backyard. It was perfect for my work as a marine biologist and as a licensed caretaker in Nevada's Endangered Fish Recovery Program. My 1,000-gallon pond had been a miniature ecosystem, federally certified and carefully maintained to help save a species, with fewer than 300 individuals left in the wild. Each fish in that pond was more than rare, they were genetically essential, and Karen had hated it from day one. She called it unprofessional, insisted it made the neighborhood look bad, and ignored every posted permit or certificate. When I explained the fish actually prevented mosquito outbreaks, she rolled her eyes. Logic never stood a chance against Karen's warpath. The harassment came steadily. First, anonymous complaints about imaginary smells, then fines for landscaping violations that weren't real. She once cited me for unauthorized water features until I reminded her that Federal Conservation Authority overrules HOA rules. Undeterred, she escalated further, measuring my fence line with tape, photographing angles to make the pond seem larger and somehow illegal, ranting at HOA meetings about standing water and disease risks. I tried inviting her to tour the pond, explain the ecological benefits, and showed her the native plants, increasing local biodiversity. She stared blankly, arms stiff across her chest. Then she said something that unsettled me. If I didn't remove the pond, she would sanitize the yard herself. I took that seriously. The next day, I installed security cameras, infrared, night vision, full perimeter coverage. My girlfriend called it paranoia. I called it insurance. And for a while, it actually worked. Karen stopped lurking around my fence line. I let myself believe the conflict had burned out. But Karen Hartley never quits. She just recalibrates. While I relaxed, she researched not environmental law, but poisons. She searched for the most effective way to wipe out aquatic life. What she chose was copper sulfate, a chemical so potent that it's tightly restricted and lethal to fish within minutes. When I discovered the devastation that morning, I called both 911 and the State Wildlife Department. The emergency dispatcher didn't quite grasp the seriousness of the crime, but officers were dispatched anyway. The wildlife officials arrived quickly and understood immediately. Dr. Patricia Reeves, the lead investigator, began testing on the spot. Her expression darkened as the results came in. The pH levels were destroyed, and the copper sulfate concentration was extreme. The dosage was lethal. The impact was irreversible. While she worked, I reviewed the security footage. And there she was, Karen Hartley in her purple tracksuit at 5:47 a.m., dragging a commercial sprayer to my fence. She methodically pumped poison into the pond, even pausing to ensure the spray reached every corner. The night vision captured it all. The satisfied look on her face as the fish thrashed and died made me nauseous. I showed the footage to Dr. Reeves, who didn't flinch. She confirmed this was far beyond vandalism. It was a federal environmental crime. The pupfish were protected, and Karen had committed an act with criminal and ecological consequences. Only 2 of the 43 fish survived. Each one was valued at $1,200 for insurance, but no amount could replace their genetic importance. Karen had erased years of conservation progress in 10 minutes. Officers visited her home that afternoon. Her neighbor Mark called me while it unfolded. He said Karen opened the door wearing her usual smug expression until she saw the badges. Her face drained instantly. She was served with multiple charges: destruction of protected wildlife, illegal chemical use, trespassing, and damaging a conservation site. The damages totaled $53,800, not including environmental fines or criminal penalties. The prosecutor told me this case wasn't just about money, it was about precedent. Karen attempted her usual deflection, claiming she'd been framed and someone had stolen her sprayer. When they showed her the video, she changed her story, claiming she had only been trying to prevent mosquitoes. Unfortunately for her, investigators discovered she had ordered the chemical with her brother's agricultural license. They traced her online searches, supply orders, and even uncovered forum posts where she asked how to eliminate a neighbor's pond. Hypothetically, her plan hadn't been impulsive. It had been deliberate, calculated, and downright malicious. As the story spread, more neighbors stepped forward. Karen's attack on my pond had been the final straw. She had forced the Johnsons to tear down their beige playhouse, made Mrs. Chen dig up her vegetable garden because it wasn't aesthetic, and fined the Millers over the color of their welcome mat. She had weaponized the HOA for years, but this time, the tide finally turned. Her court date arrived quickly. She entered, flanked by a weary-looking lawyer, and left surrounded by shame. The judge reviewed the footage, listened to the experts, and issued a sharp ruling: full restitution, $20,000 in fines, 200 hours of community service with the Wildlife Department, and 3 years of probation. One slip, and she'd be in jail. Then came the domino effect. The HOA board unanimously voted her out. Her real estate firm, well known for its sustainability branding, fired her. Her brother lost his agricultural chemical license. Even her country club revoked her membership. But the best news came from the Wildlife Department. Because of the pond's ecological importance and the severity of the incident, my property would now be designated an official federal wildlife refuge. HOA interference permanently over. From then on, any changes within 100 feet required federal clearance. Using Karen's restitution money and newly granted funding, rebuilt the pond larger and deeper. With advanced filtration and fortified security, it grew beyond a personal project. It became a state-recognized model ecosystem. Schools began taking field trips there. Researchers conducted studies. Textbooks featured it. A 10-foot fence with anti-climb features surrounded the perimeter. New cameras with motion sensors and instant alerts went up. I was done taking risks. Karen watched everything unfold from her kitchen window. The restraining order barred her from approaching my yard. She couldn't even relax on her patio anymore. I often caught brief glimpses of her staring outside, silent and powerless, while children and scientists explored the restored pond. Her reign was over. She had become the neighborhood outcast. Ironically, part of her sentence required her to clean fish tanks at the wildlife center. At first, she complained endlessly, but toward the end of her mandatory 200 hours, something began to change. She started asking questions, showing curiosity, and then weeks later something truly unexpected happened. Karen began volunteering, not out of obligation, but by choice. The last HOA meeting she attended was unforgettable. She attempted to explain herself one more time, claiming she had only been trying to protect property values. Someone asked how poisoning endangered fish accomplished that. She had no answer. The vote to remove her officially was public. 43 neighbors stood, one by one, and announced their vote. When the final tally reached 43-0, the room fell silent. Everyone understood the symbolism: one vote for each fish she had killed. As Karen was escorted away from the podium, she paused and looked at me. I expected hatred. Instead, her eyes appeared hollow, regretful, maybe even resigned. She opened her mouth as if to speak, then turned and walked out. She never attended another HOA meeting. The new HOA president immediately reversed her absurd policies. The Johnsons rebuilt their playhouse bright yellow this time. Mrs. Chen expanded her garden, and it flourished twice as large as before. The entire neighborhood felt lighter, as if a heavy cloud had finally lifted. 6 months later, received a letter from the prosecutor. Karen had completed her community service, but attached was a surprise: a $10,000 donation from Karen to the Nevada Pupfish Conservation Fund. The envelope included a note: no apology, just one line. I finally understand. I never replied. Some bridges simply can't be rebuilt. Yet I noticed she continued volunteering at the center. Maybe she really had changed. Or maybe she just needed something new to control. Either way, it didn't matter. The pond was thriving. The fish were thriving. And Karen Hartley would never hold power again. Her attempt to destroy my work had backfired in the most poetic way imaginable. My backyard had become a permanent refuge, protected not only by law, but by a community that finally saw through her FOD. Her petty vendetta secured the very legacy she tried to erase. And as I stood at the water's edge one quiet evening, watching a new generation of pupfish shimmer beneath the fading light, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. Karen had lost far more than her HOA position. She had lost her place in this neighborhood. The fish had outlived her influence. And in the end, justice didn't just repair what had been broken, it made it stronger. If watching HOA bullies finally get what's coming to them gives you life, go ahead and hit that like button. And if you want more real stories where justice wins and nature gets the last laugh, make sure you subscribe. You don't want to miss what comes next.